You are listening to the Beltway Wars Invitational Podcast, hosted by Adam Jackson and Patrick Wilton. Enjoy the show.
Okay, welcome to the Beltway Wars Invitational Week 10 Recap. I was waiting for it. Spirit fingers. You're going to need to add another finger next week, Adam.
Maybe I'll do a little flash over the video saying Week 10 as you're saying it. Maybe, I don't know.
There you go. Okay, when you said you were going to do a little flash, I was like, oh,
well, that's the OF. You can subscribe to that in the description.
Give the audience what they want for this role of podcasting. Okay. Well, let's try to make this a quicker one tonight. Let's try to get the pace of this going pretty good here. So let's start with the waiver wire recap here. The moves that were made at the waiver period last week. Couple high dollar bids, and again, in keeping with the theme of previous weeks, of the 10 waiver claims that were put in, there was only one of them that had multiple bidders. So AJ Barner, the tight end, Alex picks him up for $11. That seemed like quite a bit. Josh Hughes picks up the Pittsburgh Steelers for $8. Tej Johnson added to Brian's roster for $7. There was a two bids there. I don't know, Adam, if you have it open to see who the other.
It was Josh
non-successful.
for $5.
Josh for $5. Okay, so a nice bid there for Brian. Alex picks up Olamide Zacchaeus for $7. Alex picks up Devin Singletary for $7. Adam, you pick up Sam Darnold for $6. Colston Loveland to Brian for $6. Will Lutz, the kicker. Kicker's going for $4 here to Tom with the Denver Broncos. Tom also adding the Carolina Panthers for $2. And Adam, you adding Ollie Gordon, the backup running back for Devin Achane for $0 bid. Anything of note here in these roster additions last waiver period for you, Adam?
The kind of interesting one is AJ Barner. Now, I'm pretty sure that... I'm just taking a little peek real quick. He was... no, I thought he was dropped, but I don't think he played in this one, actually. So
he might have left early. He played 37% of the snaps, which is down from his usual 70 to 80%. So just based on that alone, I wonder if he got hurt in this one.
I would say the two other interesting kind of ones are Tej Johnson and Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus has been getting a lot of run in the Chicago offense. Kind of playing that number 2 role when Roma Dunze either scores 0 or DJ Moore scores 0. So he seems to be kind of has a little bit of a floor. He only scored 1 in this one, though. So just trying to, kind of whack-a-mole who the wide receiver of the week is going to be for the Bears has been kind of difficult. But everything else kind of seems, kind of bye weeks. Some, in my case, Ollie Gordon just protecting myself if Devin Achane goes down. But yeah, a lot of money for not a lot of people bidding on it. So very interesting there.
Very true indeed. And still a few teams, I think there's still a few teams that have not spent a single dollar of fab, which is just, I don't understand that necessarily, but it's working for them. Like Sarah has spent $5. She's in third place. Mike still has $100 left, and Scott has $100 left. So very interesting approaches there. Those are two potential bubble teams there. So interesting to see if they're saving it for something or what. Can't take it with you when we go into next year. We did have another trade, Adam, the 4th of the year. May be a record. We typically don't see 4 trades, but the last one, the trade deadline is now over with. But in a deadline deal before the games this week, Alex makes a trade with Mike but with Dallas Goedert and Romeo Doubs. So Alex, it looks like trades away Dallas Goedert and gets Romeo Doubs. Is that the
No,
case?
Alex got
Oh,
Dallas Goddard.
Alex got Dallas Goedert. So we talked about this before the show started. So it seems like
Yeah.
Mike had an extra tight end in Goddard and needed to try to get something to fill his depleted wide receiver room. He picks Romeo Doubs up. Thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alex wins this one just because Dallas Goddard is the number 6 tight end. He definitely needed a tight end. Now, again, kind of my situation as well, where it's like, you have a starting running back, but are you ever going to use them? Because Mike has Brock Bowers, so just to get maybe the number 1 option there with Green Bay is a good move, I would say, for him. Romeo Doubs, again, as we've mentioned for a couple years now, you never know who that receiver who's going to bounce or really pop off for that Packers offense. Is it Wicks? Is it Dobbs? Is it Christian Watson? Is it the rookie? So you never know. But yeah, it makes sense for both teams.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Dobbs did leave his game with an injury. Mike, trying to address a position of need. We'll talk about that later in the show. It's a big topic of discussion for the Clown College right now. Is the depleted wide receiver situation? We'll get into it later. So before we get into the matchups, Adam, as usual, if you want to take us through the standings currently and where do we sit with 4 regular season weeks remaining?
Sure. So the Berlin Banshees 8-2 stays in the number 1 spot with the most amount of points scored. At 8-2, Reisterstown Rockets goes to 7-3 in the 2nd spot there. A very wild matchup there. Went down to 2 Eagles wide receivers. Pasadena Pulverizers loses, but goes to 6-4 in the 3 spot. Timonium Neon Tubes 6-4 in the 4th spot. Union Bridge Badgers 6-4 in the 5th spot. Columbia Clown College gets the win 5-5 in the 6th spot. Pratt Street Po' Boys, you are back in playoff contention, my friend. 5-5 in that last 7th spot. The Curtis Bay Chum Buckets goes to 5-5 in the 8th spot. Westminster Wrecking Crew at 4-6 in the 9th spot. Owings Mills Ozempic 3-7 in the 10th spot. Penn Prairie Wolves 3-7 and 11th spot, and Finksburg Kinks 2-8 in the basement 12th spot.
All right, very good. Well, speaking of the 8-2 Banshees, it's going to be the first matchup that we start with here tonight. It is Dustin's team, the Banshees, getting the blowout victory over the Westminster Wrecking Crew, 161.7 to 89.32. It does move the Banshees to 8-2. Adam, what does that sound like?
Oh yeah, that's my cue. There you go. I mean, win. That's all he does. It seems like we talk about him first in every single matchup because he scores the most amount of points. Same thing in Week 10.
Yeah, Dustin's team continues to crush it this year. He had the highest scoring wide receiver this week, which was Drake London, who went 6 for 8 for 104 yards and a touchdown, chipping in a 2-point conversion to boot. He had the best, kicker this week. Jason Myers, 16.2 fantasy points. So, 2 top performers on the week for Dustin's squad here. Also got really nice performances out of Kyron Williams, 73 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. So a nice comeback effort for Kyron Williams, putting up a nice fantasy total in a 42-point scoring outcome for the Rams. Also got touchdowns out of Jalen Waddle, 16.9 fantasy points, 84 yards. Did not get a touchdown, but got plenty out of Tyler Warren, 8 for 10 for 99 yards. Really impressive day. Converted a big 4th down at the end of that game to get the narrow victory over the Falcons. I mentioned Jason Myers with 16 from the kicker spot. It was the Denver Broncos 18 in the defensive spot, giving up only 188 yards to the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah.
So another amazing week for Dustin here. Doesn't even need very much out of Bijan Robinson, who failed to get 100 yards and did not score in this one, but plenty of firepower still for Dustin's squad, Adam.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a couple options here to pick from for the Beast of the Week for Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be Drake London, you would assume, the number one wide receiver in Week 10. Going against, what actually ended up being a very entertaining game against the Colts, 8 for 6, or 8 targets, 6 receptions, 104 yards, and a touchdown. Really, really benefits with Michael Penix being back under center from his injury. He was doing really nothing with Kirk Cousins. And I mean, look at his next 3 matchups: Carolina, New Orleans, and the Jets. That is chef's kiss right there. You'd love to see it. He's in the top 10 of wide receivers, probably end up around top 5. He is my beast for Week 10.
Yeah, over 100 yards in 4 of the last 5 games that he played in. Back-to-back weeks of being the wide receiver 1 in the league, so taking advantage of a really great matchup against the Colts here. The Falcons end up they lost this game, right? I
Yes.
think. Yes, so still gets a great day out of Drake London. Um, Adam, not too many guys disappointed here, but is there
Yeah.
anyone that you want to talk about that was performing a little bit less than what you would expect?
Well, let's look at Bijan here, because like his last 3 games, right? You say that he's pretty much matchup proof, but they did have some positive matchups here. 4.3, 13.6, and 9.8. So you're not getting those huge monster numbers. Now he's still somewhat getting the volume. I mean, he had 9 against Miami, 12 against New England, and 17 rushes in this one. Just kind of disappointing. You're hoping, his projections are around 17 to 20. He was hitting those very easily early in the season. Now it's begun to slow down a little bit. I don't know if teams are trying to take him away, but still viable, still, top 3 running back. Now running back number 6, but with his volume in his situation. But he is my bust for Week 10 just because, he's really slowed down in these last 3 weeks. Now, again, he has Carolina, New Orleans, and the Jets, so they should be ahead in a lot of those games. He'll get a lot of work, and he'll probably go back to form.
Yeah, the key for Robinson's poor performance this week, I say poor, still 9.8 fantasy points, so that's like I'll take that as a floor.
Yeah.
If you're telling me there, but 5-1, Algier 5 red zone carries compared to Bijan's 1. That was the story this week. Algier, a guy that we're going to talk about a little bit later with Scott's team, I believe. But 5 red zone rushes for Algier. It certainly made a difference in the stat line for Bijan. Okay, well, so Adam, I wrote this question prior to Monday Night Football. So what I'm about to tell you may have changed slightly, but here's a list of players on Dustin's team that are in the top 10 at their position. 3 of those guys still has to play their bye. So they're benefiting a little bit from playing an extra week compared to most players, but still, Drake May, as of prior to last night's game, I don't know if it's changed, but he was QB1. He's still QB1. Incredible for the second-year player. Tyler Warren is tight end 2. That's a rookie. The Broncos defense number 3. Then we get on to guys that their bye week is already passed, so they're kind of disadvantaged compared to some other players, perhaps. But Bijan Robinson, running back 5. Kyron Williams, running back 9. Devontae Adams, wide receiver 6. Drake London, wide receiver 7. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 10. Jason Myers, kicker number 2. So I just listed 9 players in the top 10 at their position. Adam, can you guess which team in our league has the next highest number of players in the top 10, and how many would you say?
I'm going to say Sarah with 3.
Sarah with 3. Surprisingly enough, and remember, I am counting defenses and kickers
Okay.
here, so that skews a little bit. There are 3 teams with 6.
Okay.
I didn't give you the answers to this in the
No.
show notes. I withheld them from you. But there are 3 teams with 6, and those teams are Brian, Josh, and you.
I do?
There is one team with 5. That's Alex. There are 4 teams with 4. That's Sarah, Charlie, Mike, and Jake. There is 1 team with 3. That would be my team. And teams with 2 players in the top 10 at their positions, Scott and Tom.
Oh, yeah.
So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you got to jump all the way up to 9 for Dustin. So that just is a good way, I think, Adam. There's no question here, other than to have you try to guess, but just shows you the dominance of Dustin's team this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even without, I mean, I think we can all, it's all safe to say that if Rasheed Rice played the rest of the season, he'd be easily in that top 10 as well. So you could add him to the list as well. He was on bye this week. But, I mean, obviously, dominant performance this week and continues best team in the league. Really the favorite to take the whole thing.
Yeah, okay, moving on to the losing side here, Adam. Scott took it on the chin. He got blown out by Dustin, just 89.32 fantasy points. That calls for a sad sound effect, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, a really desperate time for Scott here at 4-6. Needs to make a run here. Pat, let's go over his players this week.
Yeah, look, the quarterback, again, the only quarterback on the roster for Scott, 14.72 fantasy points in a really wildly inefficient day against the Ravens, completing just 20 of 42 passes. The running backs did not do much here. All three running backs that started for Scott under 10 fantasy points: Montgomery, Tracy, and Judkins. Judkins in a matchup that I think a lot of fantasy analysts really liked against the Jets, only manages 9.5 fantasy points in this one. Ruff also at the wide receiver spot. DK Metcalf and Cooper Kupp, both of these guys failed to reach double digits. Neither of these guys scored a touchdown. Does get the touchdown from Ladd McConkey in a win over the Steelers, 18.7 fantasy points, a nice bright spot there, 107 yards. So he goes over 100 and does get the touchdown here. Other than that, not a whole lot to talk about. It was Tyler Algier on the bench with 17. It was Chuba Hubbard down to 3 carries these days. So Rico Dowdle continuing to take the lion's share, or the Panthers' share of the workload for the Panthers. So Adam, who do you want to spotlight as the beast this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's the resurgence of Ladd McConkey. I mean, we really wrote him off very early in the season, but all he's done since that point, since week 4, is scored double-digit fantasy points. I mean, through week 5 through week 10, all of those games have been double-digit points except for one. In this one, he scores his second highest point total of the season, has 6 receptions, or 6 targets, 4 receptions, 107 yards, which is his season high this year. With a touchdown as well. He seems to be reestablishing himself as that number 1 option for the Chargers, where they were, very early going on with Quentin Johnson, Keenan Allen, of that nature. Now, I don't know how this is going to change when, Marion Hampton is going to be coming back here soon. Do they become more balanced, just with Vidal kind of struggling these last couple weeks? But you love to see it. He's starting to become the second round pick that you drafted him as. He's now wide receiver number 12. He is my beast for week 10.
Yeah, tied for second on the team in targets this week. He has been a bit of a target monster for this team in recent weeks, beginning to return the value that he was drafted as. He is now a top 12 wide receiver, so he is a wide receiver 1 after the slow start to the season. Okay, Adam, is there a bust on Scott's team? I imagine with just 89 points, there probably are a couple options here.
Yeah, I mean, DK Metcalf, just, looking at the score here, you would think that he'd have a lot more targets, a lot more receptions, a lot more yards. Only 3 receptions in this one, 30 yards, 5 yards per target. So not even really throwing the ball down the field. Rodgers was having troubles in this one, trying to get him the ball. Just a really disappointing game, really 5 points, his second worst game of the season. Now wide receiver number 25. You're expecting him to do a little bit more because there's nobody really else that can really catch the ball. You have Calvin Austin, who's going to have his games, but DK Metcalf there, against the Chargers defense, which they were behind a lot in this game. You're expecting a lot more. He is my bust for week 10.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is no longer the guy that's going to be throwing down the field. This is not DK Metcalf in Seattle, where he was a down the field threat. This is a much more subdued DK Metcalf. And so you hope then that as he gets older and slower and he becomes more of a possession receiver, getting a lot of targets. But 7 seems to be the cap on targets for Metcalf this season. He only has one game where he's exceeded that number. That was
Yeah.
9 in week 6. So the targets, not where you would like him given his lack of efficiency and his lack of down the field passing this year. Okay, well, the guy I want to ask you about, I foreshadowed this earlier, is a player that was on the bench for Scott in Week 10, and that's running back Tyler Algier. This season, Algier has 5 games of 10 or more carries and 4 games of fewer than 4 carries. So 5 games of 10 or more, 4 games of 4 or fewer. Based on this fact alone, it may sound strange for me to claim that he has actually been extremely consistent. Check out the game scripts for these situations for Algier. In the 5 games that he gets 10 or more carries, he's averaging 11.2 fantasy points per game. And those games, the Falcons won by 16, they won by 10, won by 7, lost in a close one in overtime this week by 6, or lost by 3. So all of these games, they've either won or lost by a narrow margin. When he has 1 to 4 carries, 2.8 fantasy points per game, are games that they lost by 30, they lost by 24, they lost by 10, and they lost by 1. The bottom line is that Algier gets work when the Falcons win or they're in close games. And the reason that this is important, Adam, is because the Falcons' next 3 games are home to the inconsistent 5-5 Panthers, followed by road games at the 2-8 Saints and the 2-7 Jets. That's a long intro, Adam, but I think you get where I'm going here. Does Scott need to find a way to get Tyler Algier into his lineup against these kind of weaker opponents?
Yeah, I mean, this is my theory with running backs, and this is why I hate to be in these types of situations in the mid-rounds where you're picking these types of running backs that don't have a stranglehold on their team's, rushing attack. Bijan's there, so he's never going to get more than, 13 to 15 carries maybe if they're ahead, but I think it's really starting to become a discussion whether you start him or over David Montgomery. It's just like, especially with that schedule, you're thinking that they're going to be ahead. They don't want to run Bijan into the ground, it doesn't seem like. And Algier is becoming, more of that option in the red zone, as you mentioned that stat earlier. So I think you're starting Junkins still. I think it's between Tyron Tracy and Dave Montgomery. Tracy did have a nice game in this one if he would have scored for 14 carries, 71 yards. But Dave Montgomery's the kind of name that I'm looking at just because Gibbs, blows up every other week. And Dave Montgomery, it's kind of been a little bit that he's really popped off and scored some touchdowns here. He now has 5 touchdowns on the season. So floors are both low for each player, but I think now it is a discussion whether it's Dave Montgomery or Tyler Algier going forward.
Okay, Adam, let's move over to the next matchup. And again, we're talking early in the show about me and my Pratt Street Po' Boys getting the victory, another victory here. They're coming in bunches for me lately. 139.4 over Josh and his Curtis Bay Chum Buckets, who scored 102.42. Adam, I knew this game was going to be close for me. I come out with the victory. What does that sound like here for me?
I always come back.
Yeah, I used to sound you always come back because you were dead in the water very early in this season, and now you're back to 5-5 with some impressive performances from people that you had in the draft and some pickups as well. So why don't you go over those?
Yeah, 3 straight victories for me gets me back to 500 and just inside the playoff window for now until I face Dustin next week. But anyway, it's Caleb Williams this week with 25 fantasy points. This was a sort of a come-from-behind victory. He got a lot of these points late in this game, but still nice to see. I will take them however I can get them. Can't bury the lead here. Travion Henderson, probably maybe the guy you'll want to spotlight, Adam. He He had a big run in this one, 2 touchdowns. And then just got some solid production across the board at some other positions. Kyle Monangai, the running back, with 8. Zay Flowers with 10. Amon-Ra St. Brown with a solid 14. Parker Washington with 10. Jalen Warren with 10. So a lot of just 10-point solid, take it kind of performances here. Of course, relying on Henderson, relying on Caleb Williams, and relying on the Seahawks defense with 2 touchdowns in the game for 22 points. All 3 of those players I just mentioned with over 22 fantasy points. Couple injury concerns coming out of this one. Chris Rodriguez on the bench get beat up a little bit. Oronde Gadsden thought that it was going to be a knee injury. It looks like he's going to be okay day to day with I think it's a thigh bruise, actually. It's not actually a knee.
Bruise quad.
So a nice week for me, Adam, but I'm guessing you want to talk about Henderson.
Yeah, I really do, because it finally looks like, he has his job. Now, I know Ramondre Stevenson was out of this one, but how can you argue really against 10 yards per carry? I mean, it was crazy. On only 14 carries, you would have to believe that he's going to start to get more work now. 2 touchdowns, his best of the season. His yards, best of the season as well. Again, look at the matchups. You have the Jets, Cincinnati, and the Giants. Those are juicy, juicy matchups. And, TreVeyon Henderson is just way more explosive than Ramondre Stevenson. He does a lot more for this offense. You really have to be scared of when he touches the ball. I also like when he scored his second touchdown, he looked over to the coaching staff. He's like, do you want me to slide or do you want me to score? Do you want me to slide? And he went ahead and scored. So obviously cognizant of what the coaching staff wants, because he looked over to them during the play. But really impressive day. I mean, obviously his best game of the season, and I think it's trending up. He is my beast for Week 10.
Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson limited to begin the week here yesterday. Not sure what he did today, but
and
it is a toe injury. What's that?
And they play on Thursday, so
and they play on Thursday. Very good point. Very good point. It's a toe injury. I'm not sure if it's turf toe. If it is turf toe, which it usually is when you hear toe injury, you think turf toe. Those injuries can linger and kind of be sneaky. They're like hamstrings,
you hope so.
Right? Where you hear it and you don't think it's very much, like, oh, he stumped his toe, whatever. But turf toes can be quite painful and can linger for sure, affecting a running back especially, who's having to make cuts frequently on every play. So very interesting player to watch for Henderson. All right, Adam, is there a bust that you want to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a bust because he did score a touchdown, but Kyle Monangai, I mean, we were like, okay, he's going to have this, backfield now, or maybe like 60-40 with Swift, but that is not the case in this one. Only 7 carries in this one to Swift's 13, so it gets out-touched by him. 7 carries, 28 yards. This is kind of where he is now with Swift being healthy and back. Does score the touchdown there, which, you're hoping that he'll at least get the red zone work. Maybe he is a flex option. But as Swift is healthy and on the field, I think that his upside is very limited. So he is my bust for Week 10.
Yeah, interesting and a little bit disappointing that in his first game after missing a game with an injury, that Swift has his highest snap percentage since Week 4 at 62%. So that was certainly, I think a lot of people, myself included, expected or at least hoped that Monangai would be in a more even split. It was a 62 to 38% split in favor of Swift. All right, well, putting any remaining bye weeks aside for a second, I think the toughest decision that I'm going to have to make each week from here on out is who to start in my flex spot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to summarize the 4 options that I think I have, and then, Adam, I want you to rank them based on your optimism for these guys to be fantasy producers in the coming weeks. The first is a guy, I'm going to give you all 4, and then I want you to tell me what you think of these guys. So Kyle Monangai, we just talked about him. He has that uncertain workload. He has super high upside, which we saw last week, 2 weeks ago. And he is in an improving offense. The Bears seem to finally be pulling it together. Second option is Tony Pollard. He has a predictable committee work. It's not exciting. He has very low upside, and he's on a very bad offense. The third option is Parker Washington. He's been consistent recently. He's taken advantage of some targets that became available for the Jags, but he is in an uncertain situation with a new player, with an injury to Brian Thomas Jr., and he is in a work in progress offense for sure. The fourth option is Keon Coleman, who is inconsistent. In my mind, has moderate upside, but he is on a very good offense.
Yeah.
So, Adam, Monangai, Pollard, Washington, and Coleman. What do you think of these guys as flex options for the foreseeable future?
This is odd, but because it goes against everything I say about flex options versus wide receivers versus running backs. But I think it's Parker Washington. I'm not even worried about him when Brian Thomas Jr. comes back. I think that he still has upside. He has good chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. Now, I do believe that the Jaguars are more of a run-first team, just with Lawrence's struggles this season. But he gets the work, 7 targets and a touchdown, 2 straight games of double-digit points. I think that you have to play him until he proves you wrong. And he is a pretty solid flex option on a team that's dealing with a lot of wide receiver injuries.
All right. Well, who do you like the least of this group? You've got Pollard, Monangai, and Coleman to pick from.
Yeah, I'm going to say Coleman. It's this Bills offense is just so weird. It like makes no sense because like Josh Allen can really sling the ball around. He does, but it's just like they forget about him, and it's just like it's the Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir kind of, it's their show, and then they also throw it to James Cook as well. So he's kind of the odd man out. Really disappointing because he is a first-round draft pick for the Bills. Just his floor is super low, and his upside is very limited. So he would be the odd man out of those 4.
All right. Well, let's move over to the losing side here, Adam. I'm going to ask you to play a sound for the losing side. That would be Josh and the Curtis Bay Chum Buckets with 102.42 fantasy points.
No! Playing the Vader no sound because he, after 10 weeks, got bumped out of playoff contention by you at 5-5. A lot of good things to talk about in terms of players and starts versus sits in this one. Pat, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I was fortunate to come away with the victory here. There were some players on this team that I was super concerned about. I was super concerned about Puka Nacua because you have to be in a game that the Rams score 42 points. For him to only get 6 targets does get into the end zone. It limited the damage to just 14.9 fantasy points.
Isn't it hilarious that you're just like happy that Puka only got 14 points?
Exactly. Luckily for me, by Monday night, the game with the Packers, Jalen Hurts and Josh Jacobs were both playing. I had a sizable enough lead that I thought I would be okay. I was, in fact, okay. It was Jalen Hurts with 12 fantasy points. Yikes. But Josh Jacobs, on the other hand, with 17 fantasy points. Not a whole lot of offense in this game, so I guess for those guys to come away from a 10-7 game with those points is at least something. But does get nice production elsewhere in the lineup from Jawan Jennings, 6 for 9, 71 yards and a touchdown. And from Woody Marks, the rookie. The Texans end up winning this game and scored 36 points. Marks contributing 14 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown in this one. He was without Ferguson, the tight end. He was without the Chiefs defense, without Xavier Worthy, continuing to miss Brock Purdy, who's still injured. Does get 13 points from Alvin Kamara on the bench.
That's
kind
so
of the guy
funny.
That
That's so funny.
has been struggling. I did the same thing in another league, Adam. I benched him this week after giving him way too many starts, and he ends up having a nice day. 22 carries, his season high on the season. So, Adam, couple options here, I guess. Jacobs, Jennings, Marks. I'm going to ask you not to talk about Jennings, so Marks or
well,
or
you already told me who to pick, so I'll just go with that. But that's going to be Woody Marks. A nice game here. It's it's just a weird. It's just a weird situation. It's like Houston looks really good and they look bad, and it's just like. But the interesting thing with Woody Marks, 80% snap count in this one, which is by far his highest of the season. 14 carries, also his second most of the season. Does score his second touchdown of the year. Just kind of interesting. He does have Tennessee, Buffalo, and the Colts coming up now. Running back number 28. Interesting name. I think that he's finally beat out Nick Chubb for the majority of the carries. He's a more exciting player. He is my beast for Week 10.
Yeah, I believe the Texans were coming from behind in this game to ultimately win it. That might be a reason for the 80% to 30% timeshare for Marks over Chubb. But even still, if they're in come from behind mode, I can understand why Marks might be on the field more. But 80 to 13 is far and away the most. I mean, it made me click on Chubb's name to see if he was hurt. He wasn't necessarily hurt. So that's quite a good sign for Woody Marks. All right, Adam, a couple good bust candidates here. I don't know if you're going Hurts, Harvey, an option on Thursday night in that low-scoring affair. Which one of those games? I think they were both 10-7 games. Are you picking one of these guys for your bust?
Yeah, so it's going to be R.J. Harvey. You love the matchup against the Vegas Raiders. You would think that they would be really far ahead. But the interesting thing here, J.K. Dobbins is an IR candidate going forward. So his stock is really going to explode here if he does go on IR with a foot injury. But only 28% snaps in this one, 4 carries. Little involvement in the passing game. Better days ahead, it would seem, with J.K. Dobbins being out. But he is my bust for Week 10.
Okay, Adam. Well, we already talked a little bit about Woody Marks, who just had his second best week of the season. So I want to ask you about another player coming off his second best week of the season, and that's 49ers wide receiver Jauan Jennings. Despite struggling earlier in the season, he now has a touchdown and 12 or more fantasy points in back-to-back games, catching passes from Mac Jones. But it looks like he may get quarterback Brock Purdy back as early as next week, with whom Jennings, in the past, has had excellent chemistry. Jennings is currently wide receiver 46 with 2 games missed because of injury. Assuming that he's healthy, do you buy or sell Jauan Jennings as a top 24 wide receiver from this point forward?
Top 24. That's a heavy... I think 24 is the right mark. I was going to say top 30. So I think like 25 to 30 range, I would say. Number one option there with the 49ers. Again, like you said, and as a previous owner of him last year, has a really good connection with Brock Purdy as well. Seems like at the beginning of the season, he wasn't like fully healthy. I know he sat out most of the offseason with injury, contract stuff, and everything like that. But, getting 6 receptions, this one his highest of the season, 71 yards, his second highest of the season, and also scoring a touchdown. He seems to be that number one wide receiver there for the 49ers. So definitely better than 46. I'm just not ready to commit to top 24 at this point.
Okay, moving on to the next matchup. Adam, get the sound effect ready because it's going to be Charlie, but 130.04 fantasy points for Charlie's team over the Penn Prairie Wolves. That's Jake with 118.18 fantasy points. This was, as Jake termed it, the Battle of the Eagles receivers on Monday night, but it was Charlie coming away with the critical victory to get to 7-3.
Flawless victory.
Yeah, it was a flawless victory for Charlie as he goes to second place now in the standings. Behind some, really great games from a lot of his wide receivers. Go ahead, Pat.
All right, so it was Lamar Jackson. It was not Lamar Jackson getting it done this week. Just 16 fantasy points in a game that he did not ultimately have to do very much to win. He threw 29 passes but comes away with just 16 fantasy points. Got solid production, as you mentioned, across the board here at other positions. It was Breece Hall with 21 carries for 19 fantasy points. It was Devontae Smith getting into the end zone, taking it over Antonio Brown. Smith outscored Brown 14.9 to 2.3 to hand Charlie the victory. It was Nico Collins going 7 for 15 and 136 yards and a 2-point conversion. Juwan Johnson, a tight end pickup after Shaheed gets dealt. We said Juwan Johnson, I think we talked about him before, that he might have more work in this offense now. He goes 92 for a touchdown in this game. Tyler Loop, the rookie kicker, with 13.4 fantasy points. Was missing running back Chase Brown and tight end Travis Kelce for this Week 10 tilt, but does come away with the big victory with 130 points. So, Adam, who do you want to spotlight as the beast?
So I want to spotlight Nico Collins just because this is the type of thing you're looking for when you drafted him, in the first round. I mean, 15 targets, his most of the season. 7 receptions, his second most. 136, his most of the season. Doesn't even get in the end zone in this one, but scores 20 points. Also has Tennessee, Buffalo, and Indianapolis coming up. So as the Texans offense gets better, I mean, this is Davis Mills. This is an even CJ Stroud. So maybe you're kind of hoping that Davis Mills kind of sticks around a little bit longer as a starting quarterback, because Nico Collins seems to be doing better with him, or at least more consistent than with CJ Stroud. 15 targets that's just great, and 136 yards. You love it. He is my beast for Week 10.
All right, well, you should have known, Adam, that I was not going to miss an opportunity to rag on C.J. Stroud. I was going to ask you at the end of this if Davis Mills would be a better quarterback for Nico Collins for the rest of the season after giving him 15 targets this year or this week. So impressive performance there for Collins.
Yeah.
How about a bust that you want to talk about here for Charlie?
Kenneth Walker, just a kind of an odd game with Seattle scoring multiple defensive touchdowns. You're thinking, okay, well, good. They're going to run the ball a lot. Well, it wasn't Kenneth Walker because he only had 14 carries in this one. Looking at Charbonnet, also had 14 carries as well. So this is a split. And that's very hard to count on as your running back number 2 with a split going on. Looking at his bench, he does have Chase Brown, who should be able to put as that second running back, but Kenneth Walker losing value just because of the split. It looks like the days of 20 carries or more are over. It is a 50-50 split. He is my bust for Week 10.
All right, Adam, manager decision that I want to ask you about here is 2 wide receivers. They both ended up scoring exactly 10.9 fantasy points, but Charlie gives the nod to Darius Slayton of the Giants over Deebo Samuel of the Commanders.
Yeah.
Of course, they're in Washington, a tough matchup against the Lions, can certainly understand that, but was playing in this game without Terry McLaurin. Just an interesting decision, Adam. I don't know, would you have gone this direction, or would you have given Deebo Samuel the start over Darius Slayton?
Well, I mean, even with Terry McLaurin being out, Deebo Samuel struggles anyway, so it's kind of like his floor is really low. Darius Slayton maybe did a little bit better because Russell Wilson played a lot of this game. Not really sure how many catches he had from Russell Wilson, but I think Russell Wilson's better for the pass catchers in terms of fantasy value. And I didn't even realize this, but the latest news says Darius Slayton's fantasy value hinges on health of quarterback. So, they kind of have the same kind of deal there. I think Russell Wilson's better for the pass catchers in the Giants offense. Chicago, softer defense. I could see why he would play that. I don't hate it at all. It's pretty much a flip of the coin for me.
Okay. Moving to the losing side, Adam, cue up that sound effect for Jake's Penn Prairie Wolves, who lose this one, scoring 118 fantasy points.
Oh, God, I had to find it. Oh, no. I had one that I was going to use for him.
I pooped my pants.
So, this was a really important game for Jake. To try to get back into it, going now 3-7. Did have some nice games from some players, but also some injury concerns. So, Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, I texted him when Devontae Smith scored that touchdown and said backbreaker, and he said, "Yep, that's my season right there." Certainly could be 3-7. You basically would need to win out here
Yep.
the remaining 4 games to even have a shot to get basically get a 7-7 entry into the playoffs, which would be tough. Um, Look, a couple running backs and a couple wide receivers got the job done here. Jackson Dart, the quarterback, we just talked about him. We just alluded to it with Darius Slayton, 26 fantasy points. He's another one of these guys like Tua that is just so aggressive on the field, makes some questionable decisions, being the youthful quarterback that he is, gets concussed in this game, and his status is all of a sudden uncertain for next week. Did continue to get production from running back Christian McCaffrey. It wasn't the gaudy stat line that we're used to with McCaffrey. It was a solid 13 fantasy points. But again, I mean, Jake only lost by 12. So
Yeah.
McCaffrey, if you would have gotten one of those typical McCaffrey weeks of 20, 25 points, things could have been a little bit closer here. Aaron Jones, 9 for 47 and a touchdown. Good to see him get back into the end zone for the Vikings. He now has scored 10 fantasy points or more in each of his last 2 games, despite only 9 carries in both of those. At the wide receiver spot, Jackson Smith and Jigba continues to be kind of a fantasy unicorn. He's doing things statistics wise, advanced statistics wise.
Yeah, I
That
mean, he's the
no
number one.
wide rec-
He's the number one wide receiver. I mean, who would have expected that after 10 weeks?
It's wild.
Yeah,
It's
it's wild.
absolutely wild. He only played 42% of snaps in this game, and he ends up with 17.8
Yeah.
fantasy points. He was involved early and often in this game. And Stephon Diggs also gets into the end zone. A nice 5 for 8 for Diggs. He's now kind of consistently built, basically an 8 to a 13 point fantasy expectation for himself over the last few weeks. He's been pretty consistent. Does get into the end zone for his 3rd straight game here. He was not missing a whole lot on the bench. Chimere Dike was his only player on bye. Trey Benson continues to be on IR
Yeah.
and should come back in hopefully the next week or two, perhaps, for the Cardinals. So, Adam, who do you want to talk about as the Beast?
Let's just stick with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, number one overall wide receiver. I don't think anyone really had that on their bingo card. Picked in the 3rd round by Jake. Now, you did say 42%. That is because they were so far ahead so very early they did not need him at all. But even though they did not need him, still has 93 yards and a touchdown. His actual 2nd worst game of the season, but still is able to score 17 points. Matchup proof. This whole Seattle offense looks pretty good with Sam Darnold at the helm. He is the clear number one option there. His floor is probably around 15, 14. So you're starting him every single week. Great find for Jake. He is my beast for week 10.
Yeah, the interesting thing to note about Jackson Smith and Jigba, his yards per route run. That's a statistic that some of the fantasy nerds look at. How many yards is he running on average on every route that he takes? His season has just continued to get better and better. Weeks 1 through 4, 4.19 yards per route run. That was up to 4.48 from weeks 5 through 8. So far, weeks 9 and 10, he's at 6.53 yards per route run. These are numbers for perspective that are far and away beyond what other receivers are doing. Those are extremely high numbers. The other interesting fact to know, Adam, that I just realized, Jake has 2 players named Jackson on his teams, Jackson Dart and Jackson Smith in Jigba. Okay, who's the loser for Jake's squad this week, Adam? Is there a bust that you want to talk about?
Oh, for sure. And while I'm talking about him, I want you to pull up the draft board just real quick for me, just to kind of get a view of what Jake's season could have been. But it's going to be A.J. Brown. I mean, my God, it's just so annoying. He has his 2nd worst, or really 3rd worst game of the season. Only 3 targets in this one. in a very, very low-scoring game where they should have been throwing the ball 13 yards. I mean, he's had games of 8 yards and 7 yards, 27 yards. I mean, that is ridiculous for the number one option with the Eagles. And I mean, before the season, would you have thought that Devontae Smith would be, outscoring A.J. Brown? I don't think so, because they were drafted 3 rounds apart. Now, Pat, A.J. Brown was selected in the second round. Can you just give me some players around A.J. Brown that were selected maybe a little bit after him?
Yeah, well, I was the pick, the wide receiver that went before him with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who slipped.
Yep.
Right, so that's a tier break. St. Brown slipped. A couple picks later, it's Brown as perhaps the start of the next tier. But, 5 picks after that, it's Drake London.
I mean,
Then it's, yeah.
If
Lad McConkey, Brian Thomas.
I mean, if Jake has Drake London instead of A.J. Brown, his whole season is different. So that just really shows you, if you really miss on one of these, 1 or 2 round players, how it can really affect your season. Because, I mean, if you had London and Jackson Smith and Jigba, you're winning a ton of games. So, just a real miss there, and it might cost Jake his season.
Yeah, and imagine if Joe Burrow had stayed healthy, his 4th round pick.
Yeah.
If Brown and Burrow would have worked out.
Well, I mean, I'm not even worried about that because he had Jackson Dart, and Jackson Dart has been very good. I mean, very, very good.
That is true, for sure. All right, well, Jackson Dart, as you mentioned, continues to impress in this league, Adam, even without exciting playmakers Malik Neighbors and Cam Scatterboot.
Yeah.
He's now been a top 7 quarterback in 4 of the last 5 weeks, and he's been no worse than QB 16 in a week since taking over way back in week 4. So let's time travel to Beltway Wars Invitational Draft Day 2026 and play the name game to find out how many quarterbacks you're taking over Jackson Dart in next year's draft.
Okay.
I'm just going to go draft order from, well, I tell you what, let me give you the top fantasy quarterbacks on the year.
Yeah.
We'll go with that list. Let's see if we can pull it up. All right, fantasy football leaders. All right, so Drake May, we mentioned number 1.
Drake
Who are
May?
you taking next year, Dart or May?
May.
Okay, May. Mahomes or Dart?
Mahomes.
I'm going to go in a little bit of a weird order here. Josh Allen or Jackson Dart?
Allen.
Okay. Lamar Jackson is way down on the list, but let's... Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
To go Lamar. Okay. Now it starts to get maybe a little bit more interesting. Let's go with Jalen Hurts or Jackson Dart.
It's closer, but I think I'd still go Hurts.
Okay. Say like Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, this is where it is. I think that the argument can be made with Jackson Dart. It's just the rushing ability is crazy. I mean, he's getting 56, 66, 58, 55, 54. That's 5 points right there. And he's running the ball in. I mean, he's had a rushing touchdown in every game since week 6. I think you're taking Jackson Dart there ahead of Baker. Now, I know Baker can have one of these 50 passing attempt games, but he doesn't run the ball. And Jackson Dart does. It elevates his floor. So I think right there, I think Jackson Dart is the pick.
All right. Any of these other names sound like you like these guys better than Dart? Justin Herbert?
No.
Daniel Jones? Bo Nix?
No.
Matthew Stafford? Caleb Williams?
No. The only other name that I would add in there that's kind of a discussion is Jaden Daniels. Now, he did get hurt, but like for next season, I think they're kind of the same type of player. I think that's an interesting conversation.
And probably Burrow ahead of him.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not as far-fetched as you might think. I mean, just with Burrow's injury history, it seems like he gets injured every year. So,
All right, so we're talking about him as probably like a
Top 7.
QB 7 or
Yeah.
8, something like that.
Yeah.
Which means he'd probably be going in like the 7th round, 6th or 7th round here with
Yeah.
how we typically draft.
And
So
that's where I think he'll be going next year. Yep.
there you go. Okay.
I mean, imagine Malik
all right,
Neighbors with
Adam.
him. I mean, it changes the entire offense if he has Neighbors back as well.
True. He hasn't even played really with Neighbors yet, has he? What,
No.
one game maybe? Did they overlap?
Yeah.
Very, very rough. Okay, let's move to the next game, Adam. It's going to be Mike and the Columbia Clown College getting the victory over the Owings Mills Ozempics. Alex's team 129-02 to 107-64. Mike moving to 5-5. He's the number 6 seed, getting the victory and stopping the bleeding here, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, crazy, but we're going to play a sound that's kind of crazy.
I'm at the
I mean, in this game, I was kind of watching the scoreboard a little bit, and Alex was projected to win this one until Jahmyr Gibbs took off, and I'm sure you're going to talk about him, but let's go over the rest of his team.
Yeah, an interesting week to say the least for Mike. It was kind of the highs and lows this week. It was Jahmyr Gibbs with 36.7 fantasy points. I think second only to Jonathan Taylor, who we'll talk about later. But it was also Jamison Williams, the wide receiver here for the Lions, going for 20 fantasy points, 6 for 7, 119 and a touchdown. Really nice game for Javonte Williams. Baker Mayfield contributed a solid 22, almost 23 points, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions there. But then kind of got the other side of things. It was Brock Bowers. After a huge mega week last week, he returns to earth, going 1 for 3 for 31 yards, 3 fantasy points. It was Garrett Wilson leaving this game after just 0 for 3 through the air. He had a goose egg. And it was Romeo Doubs also getting hurt, just catching 1 pass for 5 yards for a single fantasy point. Was missing Javonte Williams in this game, was missing a whole bunch of wide receivers that we're going to talk about in the big question, Adam. But who do you like as your beast for Mike?
I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, Gibbs just went absolutely nuclear in this one, his best performance of the season. Again, 50% of snaps, 15 attempts, but 142 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9.47 yards per carry. Also catches a touchdown in this one. If he was on any other team, I mean, he's the obvious number 1 pick next year. It's just he keeps on splitting time with Dave Montgomery. It's just very, very annoying as a Gibbs owner. But, I mean, 36 points, what are you going to do? I mean, when he's on the field, he scores points. So he is my beast for Week 10 and has some very interesting matchups coming up, Philadelphia Giants and the Packers.
All right, Adam, well, knowing that we're going to talk about these wide receivers here in a minute, who do you want to spotlight as the bust this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk about Brock Bowers. It's just like they need a new quarterback. I don't care who it is. Geno Smith just looks so bad all the time. I know he looked good against Jacksonville, whatever, but putting Kenny Pickett, like, as someone with way more Raider shares than anyone would want, watching Geno Smith play quarterback is just so frustrating. You can't get the ball to his playmakers. You can't get it to Trey Tucker. They stack the line because they know that Geno Smith can't throw the ball. And now Brock Bowers has a really rough game in this one, 3.20 points, his worst game of the season, only 1 catch for 31 yards. Until the quarterback kind of changes, his upside is, a little bit limited. He's a very talented player and does have a juicy matchup next week, but he is my bust for Week 10.
Okay, well, this week in Week 10, Mike was able to stop the bleeding and get a much-needed victory. But the wide receiver core was dealt more bad news. Garrett Wilson left his team's game with 0 points after suffering a knee sprain that is apparently going to cost Mike's top pass catcher 3 to 4 weeks. So just to recap the situation here, Pearsall, who Mike traded for at one point this season, is still not back yet. Travis Hunter is now on IR and was actually today ruled out for the rest of the year. He's no longer on Mike's roster. Chris Godwin appears to have had some kind of a setback that has prolonged his absence. He's no longer on Mike's roster. Romeo Dobbs left his team's game with a chest injury. Darnell Mooney may as well be hurt. He caught just one pass in each of his last 3 games.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Mike has 3 top 18 running backs. No, sorry, 4 top 18 running backs. Cook, Gibbs, Javonte Williams, and J.K. Dobbins. I think we've talked about this, Adam, before, but did Mike miss a huge opportunity to trade another one of these running backs for a wide receiver? You certainly, weren't going to predict necessarily some of the developments that have happened from the injury perspective, but this team has been hurt at the position for several weeks, Adam. Did he miss an opportunity here?
I don't know, because now J.K. Dobbins looks like he's going to be out. So, it's always
would
good.
Would have been a great guy to trade then, I guess.
Yeah, it would have been a great guy to trade, but, I would say that it's easier to find production from the wide receiver position than it is from the running back position in terms of injuries. So he still has 3 solid ones that he can throw in the flex spot. But, I mean, if Dobbs is hurt and Pearsall doesn't play, he doesn't have enough wide receivers to start, I don't believe. So it's kind of in the same situation that I was in a couple weeks ago, where it's just like you got to take some stabs at some wide receivers on the free agent market. But does get the win in this one, even with a 0 and a 1 from Romeo Dobbs and Wilson. But yeah, I mean it's do or die time. He's at 5-5. I don't know if he's in the playoff spot as of yet, but he's right in the hunt. Still some very talented players, but yes, the wide receivers are very concerning.
Yeah, currently 1 spot ahead of me in the standings at number 6. Okay, the losing side, Adam, cue up the sound effect. It is Alex with a loss here, scoring 107 fantasy points. Like Jake, he drops to 3-7 and is the number 10 team in the standings.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he, at 3-7, barely hanging on to his playoff hopes. Had some odd games from some, previously really good players. Go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, the big obvious number here is 20.5 for Emeka Egbuka. He goes just 6 for 13, but 115 yards and a touchdown. Nice to see him back into the end zone. And then other than that, it was like Cameron Dicker, the kicker, with 15 fantasy points in this one. It was Josh Allen, not quite hitting the 20-point threshold that we're so used to. He scores just 19 in a odd loss to the Dolphins. They were in come from behind mode. He did throw 2 touchdowns, but lost a fumble, lost an interception for Josh Allen this week. Dallas Goedert, new trade acquisition for Alex, just 6 fantasy points here. Came up short, was without McLaurin for what feels like a 10th straight week. It hasn't been 10, it's only been, he came back in week 8, but had previously missed 4 games. So he continues to be shelved with the injury. So Adam, I don't know. I mean, Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison, a decent game.
Yeah.
He got a touchdown to save a really inefficient performance. Who do you want to talk about as the beast in week number 10?
Yeah, I mean, it's Emeka Egbuka. 88% snap count, 13 targets this season high, 6 receptions, 115 yards. His second best effort of the season, also catches a touchdown in this one. You're always like weird about like the all season when you had the beat reporters coming out saying, Baker Mayfield and Emeka Egbuka have a really good connection in training camp. You kind of just like brush that aside. You're like, okay, whatever. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, all those players are going to be above him. But those 2 players are hurt, and now he's here. Probably one of the most impressive rookies of 2025. Really does nicely in this one. Number one option for a team that will throw the ball a lot with Baker Mayfield. He is my beast for Week 10.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, he is the option right now with Godwin hurt, with Bucky Irvin hurt,
Evans.
with Mike Evans hurt. I mean, Ibuka is the guy here.
Yeah.
This is a team that typically runs, I think, a lot of plays each game, so he has plenty of opportunities. 13 targets in this game, a season high for Ibuka. Really nice performance here for him. Okay, how about who is the bust for this week?
My bust is going to be, let's just go with Romeo Doubs. Now, did get injured in this one, but, as you're someone that you're trading for, you're hoping to get a lot more out of him. Only 4 targets, 1 catch, 5 yards in this one, 62% snap percentage. It's, yeah.
We're talking about Alex's team.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Mike, I was still stuck on yours. Let's go. That's funny. Let's go Zacchaeus then, a guy that was picked up. Kind of like the Packers. It's kind of like a whack-a-mole, as I was kind of mentioning. Rome Odunze does have the nice game in this one with 6 catches. DJ Moore has 0, and Zacchaeus only has 1 catch. So only 1 point in this one in a very favorable matchup where Caleb Williams scores a lot of points. Really back and forth in this one, so you don't like to see that. Just kind of hard to kind of judge when to use him, especially with the options that you do have on the bench. So he is my bust for Week 10.
Yeah, is still playing slightly more than the rookie Luther Burden, but Zacchaeus, this was the closest that the two have been in snap percentage. It was 57% for Zacchaeus, 49%, a season high for Luther Burden in this game. So looking at the stat lines for the starters, Adam, everyone kind of just did what we would expect them to do. There was nothing really in this lineup this week that surprised me very much about any of these players. So that gives us an opportunity to talk about the wide receiver 59 on the season, Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
Now, Adam, I drafted Jerry Jeudy in another league in round 7. I cut bait on him several weeks ago. Alex, on the other hand, took him in round 6, and he's managed to hold on to him through all of his trials and tribulations with that Browns offense. He scored 16.8 points this week, his season high. He caught his first touchdown, and for the first time this season, finished the week as a top 32 receiver. Crazy. He was actually wide receiver number 12 this week. His schedule gets a lot better from here for the rest of the season. So buy or sell, Jerry Jeudy is a top 30 wide receiver the rest of the way.
I'm going to sell it. I think the quarterback is still too volatile. It would be a very interesting question if they went to Sanders, though. Because I feel like Sanders is kind of one of those personalities where he's like, I'm just going to throw it, and whatever happens, happens. I feel like Dylan Gabriel's more like conservative, going to throw those short to intermediate passes for the Browns. Now, again, you do have a very nice schedule coming up. Baltimore, who is actually playing defense a little bit better. And then you have Vegas and the 49ers. So I'm going to sell that just because of the volatility of the quarterback position. I'm not a really believer in Dylan Gabriel, at least this year. I'm going to sell that.
All right, 2 follow-up questions on Jeudy. First question.
Yeah.
Was there any point in this season where if you had him, you would have dropped him?
Oh, for sure.
Would you drop him now?
I don't think you can. Because, I mean, this is the first sign of life. If you're going to hold on to him this long, maybe you can string a couple games together where it's like, okay, now he's showing that he is that number one option for the Browns for Dylan Gabriel. I mean, maybe it can happen. I just don't see it happening. But you can't drop him when he scores 16 points. It's just kind of a wait-and-see mode right now. Which for Alex is not good because he can't wait and see really at all anymore.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next matchup here. Adam, it's your matchup. You got the victory over the Finksburg Kings, 121.12. to 86.3 for the Kinks. The Union Bridge Badgers advanced to 6-4, the number 5 seed in the standings.
The only thing I'm addicted to right now is winning.
Yeah, I mean, I go to 6-4, and I had some monster games and some horrible games from my players. Pat, go ahead.
You did. You got horrible games from the likes of Sam Darnold, the recent waiver wire splurge for you. He just scores 4.9 fantasy points in this game.
Yeah.
Very bizarre to see the Seahawks with 44 points, to see Kenneth Walker with a bad day, and to see Sam Darnold, the quarterback, with 4 fantasy points.
Yeah.
Threw 1 touchdown, had an interception, lost 2 fumbles, so 3 turnovers that he was responsible for. Tough game for Sam Darnold. It was also a tough game for DJ Moore, who was 0 for 4 in this one after a solid week 9. Comes out with a goose egg in week number 10. That's the way it goes. I feel like DJ Moore, I don't know. I feel like I've had him on my team in the past. I feel like he is good for at least 1 goose egg per season.
Yeah.
He just seems like one of those guys that can do this to you every now and again. Michael Pittman with 2 fantasy points. Trey Tucker with.
Oh, for sure. I'm going to talk about the obvious one. That's Devin Achane. I mean, what a game. Just, I am all over the place. 22 carries, 174 yards, his best game of the season. Can you talk for a second? Hold on. Oh, God. Why can't I hear you? One moment. Technical difficulties.
You're going to cut this out, right?
Oh, for sure. Okay. I think we're good. Go ahead and talk again.
Okay.
All right, we're good. All right, so Devin Achane, 22 carries, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns. His best game of the season, also has 51 yards in terms of passing attempts. I mean, even with a bad offense, Tua's doing his Tua things. He's very, I don't know if it's quietly, but top 3 running back right now. He's running back number 3. Does have Washington next week, then his bye, then New Orleans. So good matchups coming up. He's startable. I mean, he's a lock-in starter. He is my beast for week 10.
All right, here's a challenge for you. Without talking about a wide receiver, because we're going to talk about him, who is your bust for this week?
Well, I mean, I guess it's going to be Sam Darnold. This game was weird. They had multiple defensive touchdowns. I think they were up 26-0 at half. They didn't need to throw. It was just a very, very odd game. Did lose 2 fumbles and threw an interception in this one. So looking for a 1-week starter with Dak Prescott being on bye. I picked Sam Darnold. It didn't work out. He is my bust for week 10.
Yeah, it's interesting, Adam. I'm thinking about something that I don't think I've ever thought about before. So he was QB 26 on the week with 4 fantasy points. Like, one group of players that we just never talk about ever are like the bottom quarter of quarterbacks in the league. Not to say that Darnold is that. He's much better than that.
Yeah.
But just generally thinking that there's, 32 teams in the NFL, 30, 32, one of those. Like, there are guys that are like bottom of the barrel that we never will talk about on this podcast.
Yeah.
So, anyway, just a random observation.
No, there's like 15 quarterbacks you could start out of 32 teams.
Yeah, probably. Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe a few more, but yeah, certainly not those bottom of the barrel guys. All right, Adam. Wide receivers.
Wide receivers.
It's interesting to me to look back at your draft at the wide receiver position. So you took Tyreek Hill in the 4th round. And he's hurt. He's gone for the year. You took DJ Moore in the 5th. Goose egg in week number 10. Calvin Ridley in the 6th. Well, he's been hurt. Michael Pittman. You did get him in the 10th. He's been consistently pretty good this season. Really good, in fact. So one of the steals of the draft. And then you traded for Brian Thomas Jr. 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Brian Thomas missed this game with an injury. as I said, Ridley, he's been on the shelf for about a month now. Your three starters in week number 10, Pittman included, scored fewer than 5 fantasy points. So we've talked about this position group a lot with your team before. So what are you thinking at this position at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I need Calvin Ridley to come back, and I know that's a kind of funny thing to say. But I think it's going to be between DJ Moore and Calvin Ridley for that third spot. You're starting Michael Pittman. I'm starting Brian Thomas. Trey Tucker, I think that he's the wild card here. If they get a new quarterback, I feel like he'll do a lot better. Very, very juicy matchup against Dallas in week 10 or week 11, so he'll probably be in the starting lineup. It's just, it was one of those things where I took 2 running backs in the first 2 picks and kind of hoped that the wide receivers will work out. It hasn't really thus far, but the running backs have been good enough that I'm still 6-4.
Okay, well, let's move on to the losing side here. We say it a lot, but it is Tom, the Finksburg Kinks, falling to 2-8 on the year. They're now, Adam, the number 12 team in the state. Well, I shouldn't say now. They have been and are continuing to be the number 12 seed this year.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Yeah, so I mean, bottom of the barrel, just disappointing performances all around. Pat, let's lead us off here.
All right, well, let's just do what we typically do with him and start by talking about the young first and second year players. It was Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt with 3. It was, well, boy, there's not many of them left here. They're all hurt.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels missed this game. Kayshon Boutte missed this game. Matthew Golden missed this game. Isaiah Davis played and in his typical backup role had 1.6 fantasy points. Teteroa McMillan does have an okay game with 8 fantasy points here, but still nothing to write home about. So continued struggles for the youngsters, continued success for Matthew Stafford with 26.9 fantasy points. He is incredible. He is probably just one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league, Adam. This is a throwback guy, a guy that we've been following for years. Like a fine wine, he continues to get better with age and has his Rams playing at a very high level. It was Saquon Barkley with 11 fantasy points. Fails to get into the end zone in that low-scoring Monday night chilly game there for the offenses in Green Bay last night. TJ Hawkinson continues to struggle, 1.8 fantasy points, has not been a very good season. He is now tight end 24 on the year. So, Adam, Stafford, Alec Pierce, one of these guys, probably your beast this week.
Well, let's just say this, right? Matthew Stafford and Alec Pierce were the 2 players that Tom traded for. And they're the 2 best players that did the best this week. So I'm going to go with Pierce. Kind of a unknown name, I would say, just with the Colts. With Jonathan Taylor leading the headlines. But 3 of his last 4 games, he scored double-digit points. Gets consistent targets, 10, 5, 13, and 7. Scores his first touchdown this season against Atlanta. Now on bye in Week 11. But, very consistent, big player for Daniel Jones to throw the ball to. Again, it's kind of like the Bears, kind of like the Packers, where you have Josh Downs, you have Michael Pittman, you have Alex Pierce, you have Tyler Warren. One of these players is going to blow up each and every week. This week it was Alex Pierce, so he is my beast for Week 10.
Yeah, hey, Pierce did play 95% of the snaps. He led the team in terms of snap percentage, and has basically done so for the better part of the last 5 or so weeks. So he is on the field a lot for the Colts, and Daniel Jones typically has been competent enough to find him. Okay, Adam, how about a bust for this week? You have quite a few options.
Yeah, let's go with TJ Hawkinson. I mean, oh, God, it's so annoying. He has so much potential. He's so good. I mean, looking back to 2023 and 2022, number 4 and number 2. So last year he was kind of hampered by injuries. was 33, but now only tight end number 24 this year. Again, it's a change of quarterbacks. It's kind of a weird thing where it feels like the change in quarterback really affects tight end, like, heavily. I don't know why. But very talented player, just doesn't see the ball enough. J.J. McCarthy doesn't look for him enough. Only 2 targets in this one. 3 or less targets in his last 3 games. He is my bust for Week 10.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. It's not like there's another tight end for this team that is getting any run at all. Josh Oliver has been hurt, so he hasn't played in a few weeks. Ben Urosic is the next leading target or snap getter at the tight end position. Nobody knows his name. So it's not like the Pittsburgh situation where there's 2 or 3 tight ends that are involved. He is the only tight end on the field for the Vikings. So very unfortunate continued struggles for Hockenson. Well, it's been a lost season for Tom, due almost entirely to a very risky draft strategy of targeting those first and second-year players, none of which have really panned out. But this week, it was the graying veteran Matthew Stafford, who we mentioned, delivering another huge fantasy day. He's now eclipsed 25 fantasy points in 5 of his last 6, and is now QB7 on the year. He hasn't thrown an interception since week 3, while throwing 20 tutties during that period. So what does it say about the NFL, Adam? Zooming out for a second, just wax poetic about what does it say that guys like Matthew Stafford, Joe Flacco can come in and play at the level that they're playing at, especially when you've got players like Jackson Smith and Jigba and Jahmyr Gibbs who are, outliers at their position. As offensive as the NFL has become, what does it say about these old school quarterbacks who don't run that can still put up big fantasy numbers at their age?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to the draft strategy, right? Where it's like you can wait on quarterback and you can get one of these guys, these savvy veterans, like you mentioned, that can really sling the ball around and be very productive. Matthew Stafford, again, he's one of these quarterbacks that doesn't run. It doesn't seem to matter, though, because he has Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua there. He should be in the MVP conversation, you would think, just with his efficiency. I mean, the last 3 games, 5 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. So he's a very good quarterback. He's definitely startable going forward. And, I mean, just looking at his history, I mean, when you have to scroll looking at his fantasy football history, it's pretty impressive. Has multiple top 10 finishes. He's just the ageless wonder, as they say, Matthew Stafford. So good trade for Tom, but it just might not be enough, and it probably isn't enough.
Okay, well, let's move to the last matchup here, the lowest scoring winner. And I think one of the closer matchups might be the closest final total. It was Brian.
It's definitely not the last matchup. Is it the last matchup? It might be. Oh, it is. Okay.
It is. Yeah, so Brian gets the victory here, 117.8 over Sarah's Pulverizers, 114.6. So just about a 3-point margin of victory. The Timonium Neon Tubes advanced to 6-4. They're now the number 4 team in the standings, Adam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's me. Yeah, so this was another one of these matchups that really came down to the wire. And Brian gets the win. Now it's 6-4. I think this was if we're going to look back as the season is over, I think this is going to be a week for him that was really pivotal that he got a win. He is now 6-4. So let's go over his players.
Yeah, he got the win despite a couple important key players that really just did not have a very good week. Bo Nix right at the very top at quarterback, 5 fantasy points, completed 16 for 28 for 150 yards and a touchdown, but did throw 2 interceptions in that 10-7 victory over the Raiders. So a down week for him. A down week, relatively speaking, for Justin Jefferson, 4 for 12 for 37 yards, and Quentin Johnston, who just had 6 fantasy points, 5 for 10 for 42 yards, but did get enough out of some other players here. The running backs, Rico Dowdle, Kamani Vidal,
Yeah.
each going over 13. It was 13 for Dowdle, 17 for Vidal. Both of those guys continuing to get the clear RB1 workload. Roma Dunze with a nice performance here, 6 for 10, 86 yards and a touchdown. Really nice to see that after the struggle, the goose egg that he had in week number 9. And then the big performance from Trey McBride, 9 for 13, 127 and a touch. He's now tight end number 1 on the season. And then in the flex spot, a really good, this was a waiver acquisition, Tez Johnson getting 18 fantasy points. He scored twice for the Buccaneers. Really, really good game there. The only injury news, Adam, that I want to mention briefly is Bucky Irving. I know because I have him in another league and I've been following this situation very closely. He continues to just be status quo. There's no real updates for him. His shoulder has not healed to the point where he can make contact. Seeing some Twitter docs, Adam, saying that Bucky Irving, they very well could just shut him down for the year. If his shoulder doesn't get better, if they think that he needs surgery because it's not healing, it's very likely, in my opinion. Just the feeling, you know that feeling when you get when you've got a player in this situation, and you just feel like it's not.
Christian McCaffrey last year.
Right, exactly. That's what Bucky Irving feels like at this point in time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, Adam, there were a surprising amount of good performances for Brian or for Brian's team. Who do you like the most?
Yeah, let's go with Trey McBride. I mean, his second best game of the season. 13 targets, his most of the season. 9 receptions, second most of the season. 127 yards is his most of the year. Also scores a touchdown. Again, talking about switching of quarterbacks, right? It's like now they go to Jacoby Brissett. He looks for him early and often. He's a very trusted piece in that Arizona offense. So you love to see that. That just elevates his value even more than when he had Kyler Murray. Next 3 matchups, San Francisco, Jacksonville, and Tampa Bay. So he's obviously, number 1 tight end. He's a start and forget. He is my beast for Week 10.
Yeah, McBride, it's interesting the red zone looks that he's gotten this season. In weeks 1 through 5, he typically had usually 1 to 2 red zone targets per game. In the 5 weeks since, he's averaging right about 3 to 4 red zone targets. So that's ticked up a little bit in a consistent way for him. 3 red zone targets this week. He, I believe, leads the team by 3 over
Marvin Harrison?
Actually, by 9 over Harrison Jr. So by far, McBride more than almost doubles up Harrison in terms of red zone targets.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, he just reminds me of like a young Travis Kelce, where it's just like it doesn't matter how you game plan around him. He's going to get his looks. He's going to get his targets. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, 127 yards is a nice effort from a tight end. Okay, Adam, how about the loser? Let's hold off on Justin Jefferson for now.
God, you monster.
Sorry.
Well, I guess we just go to Bo Nix, a very, very juicy matchup against the Raiders and does absolutely nothing. Only 150 yards. That is his lowest of the season. 1 touchdown, 2 picks in this one, and doesn't run the ball at all, which, as you see in his stat history, he does run the ball a little bit. Doesn't run it at all in this one. It's just like he's so talented, and then he just drops one of these. Now, it doesn't hurt Brian, but again, let's look around playoff time. He has Green Bay, Jacksonville, and Kansas City. I mean, those are some games where it's like you could see that he could score, a 6er, and now you be out of playoff contention. So he is my bust for Week 10, and he's very boomer bust at this point.
Okay, well, we did the worryometer for a few of Brian's players last week, but one guy that I did not include in that segment was wide receiver Justin Jefferson. He hasn't necessarily been a bust, per se, in the traditional meaning of the term, but he's currently wide receiver 15 after being drafted as the 2nd wide receiver off the draft board. The targets are there, but the touchdowns and the efficiency are certainly not. Through 10 weeks last year, so same time period last year, Jefferson had reached 80 yards in games 7 times. He's done that just 3 times this year. He's had 5 touchdowns in those first 10 games last year compared to just 2 this season. What's your confidence level in Justin Jefferson improving this season with quarterback J.J. McCarthy throwing him the ball the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried because, like, I think he's a wide receiver too, like now. Maybe a high-end wide receiver too, but I mean, obviously I watched this game a lot because it was against Baltimore. It's just like, the only thing they do with him is like, okay, Justin, run down the field as far as you can, and J.J. McCarthy, you're just going to throw it up in the air. Those were the 2 picks that he threw. Basically, Jefferson fell down on one, and then it was undercut by Malik Starks. It just kind of seems like J.J. McCarthy's not looking for him because they're probably double covering, doing the bracket coverage against Justin Jefferson, and then he looks for other options, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor. So it's kind of like he's so talented that it's actually hurting his value because teams are paying attention to him so much, and the poor quarterback play also hurting him as much. I mean, what is his value if Sam Darnold is his quarterback still? I mean, I think that's all that remains to be said there. Yeah, I'm worried. The worryometer is probably like a 7. You're still starting him regardless because of just how talented he is, but he hasn't had one of those 30-point blow-up games that he usually does. I mean, his highest point totals this season is 17 in Week 4. So, yeah, definitely not getting the value that you drafted him with the 4th pick in the draft.
Yes, totally agree on that count. Okay, Adam, moving on to the last team. It's Sarah's Pasadena Pulverizers, falling to 6-4, still the number 3 team in the standings, just 114 points this week.
Damn!
Yeah, so it goes to 6-4, even with the historic game of one of her players. Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, that was Jonathan Taylor. Can't bury the lead there. 48 fantasy points,
Yeah.
32 carries, 244 yards, 3 more touchdowns. Oh, and by the way, 3 for 3 for 42 through the air. So just a crazy season for Jonathan Taylor. The fantasy MVP probably makes a good case for the NFL MVP if it typically goes to quarterback, but man, he is doing wonders in that Colts offense. Also got a big game here from Chris Olave, who went 5 for 8 for 104 yards and a touchdown. This is the first week post Rashid Shaheed. He does, get 8 targets, which you love to see, for his second highest fantasy point performance on the season. But all of that from Olave and from Jonathan Taylor were not enough to overcome, first and foremost, the bye weeks to Patrick Mahomes, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens.
Yeah.
But also just a slew of poor performances here from Jordan Mason with 3, Rashid Shaheed with 2, Keenan Allen with 2, Hunter Henry with 1. The Vikings defense, starting them against the Ravens is a choice.
It is a choice.
They scored just 2 fantasy points this week for the Vikings. So, Adam, if you want to talk about Jonathan Taylor, feel free.
I mean, you have to. I mean, just what a game. And, I was talking to, my dad and his friends about, playing fantasy football in the 80s. And they were talking about, like, every single running back in those days the team always had a running back that would carry the ball 25 to 30 times. Like, every team had a player that would do that. Now the NFL has evolved where it's, you're rarely ever seeing 30 carries out of a running back. But Jonathan Taylor is one of those guys where he's getting, 20 plus carries every single game, and he's doing the most with it. 3 touchdowns in this one, 244, obviously his season high. Also his second best receiving day of the year. Just, number 1 pick next year, probably. He's amazing. Number 1 overall player, number 1 overall quarterback. He is my beast for Week 10.
All right, I just want to throw some caution here. I just want to mention, I just think it deserves to be mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah has lost 2 in a row.
Yep.
Jonathan Taylor has been incredible. He was not very good last week.
Yep.
Last week was his only single-digit performance of the season. But this week he goes for 48 and loses, and she loses. Next week he's on bye.
Yeah, I'm
And
seeing
then
it.
the schedule is at Kansas City, home to Houston, at Jacksonville, at Seattle. Those are 4 really good defenses, especially against the running back. So I'm just saying, Sarah needs as much as she can get out of Jonathan Taylor. And I just wonder if you have to temper, obviously matchup proof and all that, but do you temper expectations a little bit moving forward?
Well, I mean, I think you have to. Kansas City, Houston, who has a very, very good defense as well, and they haven't played Houston yet. They haven't played Jacksonville either, and those are all division games. So we don't know what that kind of looks like. From the first half of the season, playing them the second time. You got to temper expectations a little bit, but I think projections probably around 20 points is kind of what you're expecting out of those games.
Okay, plenty of choices here for the bust. As I mentioned, there were a
Yeah.
lot of single-digit performers this week in the kind of sub-5 category. Adam, is there one person in particular that you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's go with Keenan Allen. I mean, it's just 3 straight weeks with single-digit points. He seems to be an afterthought now after a very good beginning of the season where he scored 3 straight double-digit points. Lam McConkey reestablishing his role as the number 1 wide receiver. You also have Quentin Johnson there as well, who had 10 targets in this one as well. So he now appears to be the number 3 option with the Chargers offense. And, Amarian Hampton's coming back. That's going to change the dynamic a bit as well. Just not enough balls to go around for Keenan Allen. He is my bust for Week 10.
Okay, well, I mentioned that Sarah has now dropped 2 straight games after a significant win streak. Part of the reason, I think, has been declining production from some guys like Keenan Allen, Jordan Mason, Rashid Shaheed, Hunter Henry, Rashad White. All of these guys have sort of had a red arrow pointing down for the last couple of weeks. Her Cowboys wide receivers will come back from their bye next week, and running back phenom Amarian Hampton has come out of his walking boot, which could be back maybe in a few weeks. How are you feeling about Sarah's chances right now with what seems to be a really streaky team?
Yeah, I mean, very talented team. And, I mean, we didn't even mention Chris Olave, number 11 wide receiver. I mean, that's kind of eye-opening there. So, you have CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens coming back. You're throwing those 2 in for those 2 wide receiver spots. You have to get Jordan Mason out of there while Amari Hampton is out. You got to put Rashad White there. And then you just pick whoever has the best matchup in terms of Rashid, Shaheed, and Keenan Allen. But again, we kind of mentioned, players getting traded away from one offense to another. What's their production going to be like? Well, after 1 week, and I know it was a weird game, but Shaheed did not have a good one in this one. So kind of hard to trust there. I like her chances just because Jonathan Taylor, he's amazing. You still have Patrick Mahomes, who's had a very nice season. CeeDee Lamb, all that stuff. So I think the arrow's pointing up. She just needs to, get more consistency out of these, the second running back position and some of the wide receivers.
All right, Adam. Well, I will go through the bye week teams here. If you can pull up the matchups for Week 11. This week, Week 11, we've got the Indianapolis Colts and the New Orleans Saints on bye. So just 2 teams there. It is going to be Sarah hurting the most of anybody with Jonathan Taylor and Chris Olave, the 2 guys we just got finished talking about, on bye. She gets the Cowboys back, but that's going to be a tough one. She does have Tom next week, so if there's any consolation, it's that. Brian will have Daniel Jones and the Colts defense on bye. I think he'll be okay. Adam, you've got Michael Pittman on bye. Tom has Alec Pierce. Dustin will be without the services of tight end Tyler Warren. Josh will be without Alvin Kamara. And Charlie will be without Juwan Johnson. I don't have any bye weeks next week. I'm happy about that. I am not happy, though, Adam, that I will have Dustin next week. Let's talk about the matchups for Week 11.
Sure. So the Union Bridge Badgers at 6-4 going against the Reisterstown Rockets at 7-3. The Owensville Ozempic at 3-7, going against the Curtis Bay Chum Buckets at 5-5. The Prince Street Po Boys at 5-5, going against the Berlin Banshees at 8-2. The Westminster Wrecking Crew at 4-6, going against the Columbia Clown College at 5-5. The Pasadena Pulverizers at 6-4, going against the Finksburg Kinks at 2-8 trap game. And the Penn Prairie Wolves 3-7, going against the Timonium Neon Tubes at 6-4.
All right, very good. Well, that does it for the Week 10 recap. I'm Patrick, he's Adam. We will see you next week. Good luck in Week 11.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening and your support. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify.